You've been lied to your whole life. They told you weakness was beautiful, that it meant being humble, gentle, kind. They praised the silent sufferer, the one who turns the other cheek, the one who quietly accepts. But what if that was never virtue? What if that was exactly what kept you stuck? Nietzsche didn't just disagree, he despised this idea. He believed that weakness wasn't something to protect, it was something to overcome. And more than that, he saw it as a poison, one that seeps into your thoughts, relationships even, your dreams. It doesn't scream, it whispers, convincing you that mediocrity is noble and ambition is sin. But Nietzsche's view flips this on its head. Brutally. In this video, you'll discover why Nietzsche believed weakness was the enemy of truth, power, and even love. We'll go deep not just into his words, but into the life behind them, what made him see the world this way, and why, if you understand it, could everything in your life start to shift today. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. There's a scene in The Death of Stalin that feels more real than satire. After Stalin's sudden collapse, a room full of powerful men, supposedly leaders, stand around frozen, incapable of acting. They're terrified, not just of making the wrong decision, but of being seen as weak. That silence isn't just awkward, it screams something Nietzsche would never ignore. Weakness paralyzes power. Now imagine this outside a movie: your job, your relationships, even politics. When a person lacks backbone, others feel it. Trust doesn't flow toward insecurity. In fact, the concept of weakness for Nietzsche wasn't just about strength versus softness, it was about chaos beneath the surface. And chaos, my friend, doesn't inspire confidence. If anything, it signals danger. Ask yourself, who would you follow into battle or even a tough meeting? Someone who hesitates with every step, or someone who acts, even when afraid? Nietzsche knew that when weakness leads, decay follows. Not because weakness is evil, but because it lacks the center gravity that holds things together. And that's exactly what will start to unfold. Nietzsche didn't see weakness as some harmless personality quirk. For him, it was a dangerous force, one that erodes truth from the inside out. The weak person, in his view, can't face reality as it is, so they bend it. They lie not just to others, but more tragically, to themselves. And nothing is more destructive than someone who thinks their illusion is truth. The concept of weakness, for Nietzsche, isn't simply physical or emotional fragility, it's moral evasion. It's refusing to look life in the eye and say, yes, it's hard, and I'll face it anyway. The weak hide behind comfort, blame, even morality, if it excuses their inertia. They protect their fear by painting it as virtue, but deep down, they know they're dodging the mirror. You've probably seen it before. Someone who justifies their inaction by claiming they're being nice or humble. They're not. That's weakness dressed in spiritual drag. Nietzsche had no patience for that disguise. He believed true goodness only emerges from strength, because strength has nothing to prove. It gives without needing applause. It speaks truth without flinching. So the next time you see someone hiding behind virtue to avoid responsibility, remember Nietzsche's warning. Real honesty demands inner power, and those without it, they're not just avoiding pain, they're avoiding life itself. But this self-deception doesn't stop there, it goes deeper. Into the stories we tell ourselves to feel better when we're afraid of our own truth. Their single quotes as a powerful story from Dostoevsky about a man who pretends he's unaffected by heartbreak. He walks around with a polite smile, sipping tea, acting as if everything's fine. But Nietzsche would immediately call this out not as resilience, but as weakness. Why? Because denying your suffering is just lying with extra polish. It's self-deception wearing a tie. For Nietzsche, the concept of weakness was intimately tied to this type of dishonesty. Weak people don't admit their wounds, they cover them with pride or moral excuses. They'd rather play the victim or the martyr than say, yes, I'm broken, and I need to grow. In their world, vulnerability becomes something shameful. But ironically, hiding it only deepens their pain. And here's where it gets personal. How many times have you said, I'm okay, when you weren't? Or told yourself, I didn't really want that promotion anyway, just to soften the blow? That's the Nietzschean weakness creeping in. It's not the pain that damages you, it's the refusal to confront it. Growth demands honesty, especially when it stings. The death of Stalin may have shown men lying to each other, but Nietzsche focused on something darker: when we lie to ourselves. Because once we do that, we become strangers in our own minds. And when that happens, we don't just lose truth, we lose the will to change. Which brings us to the next point. Why Nietzsche believed failure isn't the real enemy, but pretending you didn't fail is. Nietzsche didn't hate failure. In fact, he embraced it as long as it was faced with clarity. To fall and say, yes, I fell, is a moment of power, not weakness. But to fall and pretend it didn't happen, or worse, blame others, that's when weakness takes root. The problem isn't in missing the mark, it's in refusing to admit you missed it all. The concept of weakness for Nietzsche wasn't about losing it, was about refusing to learn. Strong people treat failure like fuel. They dissect it, learn from it, and return sharper. But the weak, they craft stories to protect their ego. That job wasn't for me. That relationship was toxic anyway. Sound familiar? These narratives feel good, but cost growth. Think about someone like Thomas Edison. He failed 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. But he didn't rewrite history to avoid shame. He owned his attempts. Nietzsche would call that strength, not in succeeding immediately, but in confronting failure head-on. The same goes for life. If your business fails, your dream cracks, your plan implodes, face it. That honesty, that's where strength begins. So, when Nietzsche talks about weakness, he's not saying you should be perfect, he's saying you should be truthful. The pain of truth hurts once. The lie of weakness bleeds you slowly. But there's another type of weakness he hated even more, the kind that comes from within, where your own thoughts tear you apart. For Nietzsche, weakness didn't always scream. Sometimes it whispered inside your head, disguised as confusion. He saw the mind not as one voice, but a chaotic orchestra of impulses pulling in opposite directions. And when none of those impulses take the lead, what happens? Paralysis. You don't move forward, you swirl in place, stuck in thought loops that lead nowhere. This internal weakness, where your will lacks organization, is what Nietzsche feared most. One day, you want to start a business. The next, you're binge-watching shows convincing yourself, now's not the time. Sound familiar? That's not laziness, it's the death of will. Without a strong center to align those conflicting desires, life loses structure. And when structure collapses, meaning follows. It's like trying to steer a ship with 10 captains shouting different directions. You end up circling the harbor, watching others sail past. That's the concept of weakness for Nietzsche. Not just lack of force, but lack of inner unity. And in that state, even talent gets wasted, because talent without direction isn't a gift, it's a burden. The death of Stalin hinted at this chaos too. Everyone wanted power, but no one had clarity. The result? Disorder, panic, and fear disguised as action. Nietzsche believed that if you don't master your will, something else will. And this fragmentation of desire leads straight to nihilism. But what keeps that from happening? A clear commitment to your own values. Nietzsche didn't care much for people who chased every shiny thing. For him, the truly strong weren't the busiest, they were the most committed. To create your own values and follow them with conviction, that was strength. But to be blown around by every trend, opinion, or impulse, that's the purest form of weakness. It's like building your house on sand and wondering why it keeps falling. Think of someone who constantly shifts careers, ideologies, or relationships. They might call themselves versatile or open-minded, but Nietzsche would see it differently, as someone afraid to choose. Because choosing means committing, and commitment makes you vulnerable to failure. The concept of weakness for Nietzsche included that refusal to anchor yourself to anything meaningful. And here's the irony. When you don't trust yourself, no one else will. A person who can't commit to their own path becomes invisible to others. Employers don't promote them. Friends don't rely on them. Even they start doubting themselves. Confidence doesn't come from having it all figured out. It comes from sticking with what matters. Even when it's hard. Remember the death of Stalin again. The room was full of men who couldn't decide what to do. They were afraid of taking a stand. That hesitation wasn't strategy, it was weakness in action. Nietzsche believed the ability to say, "This is my way," and walk it despite fear is the foundation of power. But this becomes even clearer when we look at how people fake virtue through pity. Nietzsche had no patience for pity. To him, it wasn't noble, it was a game, a power game, to be precise. When someone showers others in exaggerated compassion, it often isn't about love, it's about control. "Look how much I care," they say, but what they really mean is, "Now you owe me." That's not strength. That's emotional debt dressed up as virtue. The concept of weakness for Nietzsche often showed up in these dynamics. The one offering pity feels morally superior, and the one receiving it becomes passive, smaller, grateful. And when dependence replaces dignity, both sides lose. True strength, Nietzsche argued, doesn't need to dominate through sympathy. It uplifts without robbing the other of their agency. We see this manipulation everywhere, from charity campaigns that exploit misery for clout, to friends who help just to hold it over your head. That's not compassion, that's currency. Nietzsche warned us, whenever pity feels performative, it probably is. And if you've ever accepted help that made you feel smaller, you know exactly what he meant. In The Death of Stalin, some characters cry for the fallen leader, not out of grief, but out of obligation and fear. That's the danger of false emotions. They rot trust from the inside. And Nietzsche believed that real strength doesn't pity, it empowers. Which leads us to the next idea, the kind of compassion that actually builds people instead of binding them. Nietzsche didn't reject compassion entirely, he just redefined it. Real strength, he argued, helps without needing applause. The Bemenschter, ideal human, acts from abundance, not emptiness. He doesn't help to feel important, nor does he create dependency. He gives because he can, not because he needs. 2. That's what separates power from manipulation. This is the opposite of the pity Nietzsche despised. Imagine someone mentoring a struggling friend. A weak person says, "Let me fix you, so you'll admire me." The strong one says, "Here's what helped me, take what you need, and run further." One seeks control, the other offers freedom. And that freedom, that's the heartbeat of true generosity. When we give from a place of inner wealth, we don't shrink others, we expand them. Think of someone like Marcus Aurelius or Viktor Frankl. Their words uplift because they come from clarity, not neediness. Nietzsche believed that the Bermensch doesn't need to dominate others to feel powerful. He simply is powerful, and that radiates in his actions. Even in The Death of Stalin, there's a moment where silence would have been stronger than speech, where helping without a motive could have saved lives. But the characters were too trapped in weakness to rise. Nietzsche wanted us to break that chain, and to do so, he offered one of his most misunderstood but transformative ideas. Love your fate even when it hurts. Nietzsche single quotes his concept of amore fati. Isn't some abstract philosophy, it's a call to arms. It means loving your fate, every brutal, beautiful piece of it, not just tolerating hardship, but embracing it. Because to reject pain is to reject life itself. And to Nietzsche, that was the ultimate weakness, saying no to reality simply because it's uncomfortable. When people adopt pessimism or antinatalism, they're not being profound, they're flinching. Nietzsche saw these worldviews as dressed-up fear, wrapped in intellectual language. Life is suffering, so why live at all, they ask. But for Nietzsche, the stronger question was, life is suffering, so how will you rise? Weakness asks for escape. Strength asks for transformation. This is where The Death of Stalin becomes more than political satire. The film's darkness reflects a world terrified of its own reflection, people too fragile to face consequences, history, or truth. Amor fati says, own your failures, your flaws, your fears. Wear them, learn from them, because rejecting them only leads to bitterness, cynicism, and paralysis. Nietzsche's hero isn't the one who avoids penance, the one who turns pain into purpose. That's why he scorned ideologies that worship escape. And yet, one of the most powerful of these escapes, wrapped in holiness and tradition, is still widely celebrated. You've guessed it, Christianity. And Nietzsche didn't hold back his fire when it came to that. Nietzsche had no mercy for Christianity, the version shaped by St. Paul. He believed it turned weakness into virtue and suffering into currency. Instead of encouraging people to embrace life, it told them to wait for a better one after death. To Nietzsche, this wasn't faith, it was escapism, a spiritual anesthesia for those too afraid to face reality head-on. The concept of weakness, for Nietzsche, found its perfect disguise in religious guilt. Blessed are the meek, they say, but what if meekness just meant suppressed resentment? He believed that denying earthly joy and worshipping sacrifice wasn't noble, it was dangerous. It trained people to hate strength, ambition, and even pleasure, all under the guise of salvation. Nietzsche saw the cross not as redemption, but as a symbol of human surrender, a way to glorify suffering rather than overcome it. And the result, generations of people taught to find meaning only in obedience and pain. Instead of building inner power, they were told to wait to be rewarded for their weakness later. That, to Nietzsche, was the true betrayal of life. In the death of Stalin, the fear-driven obedience mirrors this same mindset. Follow orders, don't question, suffer now, maybe one day you'll be free. But Nietzsche urged the opposite. Live now, fight now, become now. He wasn't interested in comfort, he was interested in awakening. And the real question is, are you finally ready to wake up? So now you know. Nietzsche didn't despise weak people out of cruelty, he despised what weakness does to people. It strips away honesty, it feeds illusions, it chains potential to comfort. But the real tragedy, most don't even realize they're trapped. They confuse fear with humility and call surrender peace. But deep down, they feel the itch to rise and ignore it. What would happen if, just once, you stopped apologizing for your strength? What if you embraced discomfort, not as punishment, but as the gateway to who you're meant to be? Are you still numbing your truth with soft lies, still hiding behind masks of virtue that keep you small? Or are you ready to confront the raw, unfiltered power inside you? Let me ask you, what would Nietzsche see if he looked at your life today? Would he find someone molding their fate or someone avoiding it? If this video stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Leave your thoughts below. I want to hear how this message hit you. And if you're serious about growing stronger, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. There's so much more we need to talk about.